What's up, guys? It's Outcast back again, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit differently. As you may or may not know, Dragon Age The Veilguard comes out on October 31st. And as you may or may not know, I'm a huge fan of the Bioware games, particularly the Dragon Age series. And what we're going to be doing today is a Dragon Age Origins companion tier list, ranking them from S tier all the way down to F tier. And just in case you're curious, no, this video is not sponsored, but fuck me, do I wish it was, because Lord knows I need the money. So the way we're going to be ranking these characters is based on overall likability, personal story arc, and impact of the game. And the way I'm going to be choosing these characters is based off where either they first appeared in or where they had the most impact, as you have some crossover characters such as Cullen or even Leliana that show up in different games, but I'm choosing where they made their most impact. And one final thing, this is a 100% legitimate, definitive companion tier list. Meaning, if you disagree with me, you're wrong. Now, without further ado, let's get straight into it. All right, so first up on the list, we have Alistair.
You fear barbarians will swoop down upon you.
Yes, swooping is bad.
He's a human, sword and shield, Grey Warden warrior. In the beginning, he seems a little bit whiny, he seems a little bit entitled, maybe even spoiled, like he really doesn't want to be there, because he really doesn't. And overall, he can be kind of grating and even annoying in the very beginning. However, as the game progresses, you kind of get to feel for the guy. He has a great character arc where he just kind of realizes that he's actually of noble lineage. He has a sister living in Denerim. So seeing that development within him is actually really cool. Also, he's one of a couple characters where he can have different endings. For example, at the age of Dragon Age Origins, he can either become king by himself, he can rule with Queen Honora, he can become the leader of the Grey Wardens, just like his mentor Duncan was, or he can reject all of this and he ends up becoming a drunkard by the time Dragon Age 2 comes around, which is actually kind of depressing if he goes this route, and you really gotta try to make him be a drunkard, and I'll explain later on in the video why. So keeping all this in mind, I'll put him at an A rank. He's not one of my favorite characters ever, he's phenomenal, but I wouldn't put him at an S tier. He needs just a little bit more, and he gets put on the S tier. Next, we have the love of my life, Morrigan.
Then come, my love. We will face the future together.
So Morrigan is a shape-shifting witch, and as it's common with all of these characters, they have a tragic backstory. Essentially, she was kidnapped by the witch Flemeth as a young kid, and she's been forced to live out in the forest with Flemeth as an apostate. Now, in the beginning, she's very abrasive, she's very blunt, she doesn't have tact, mainly because she doesn't have a lot of interactions with the outside people. It's always been her and Flemeth. So she's always blunt and straight to the point, which can make her seem, again, really rude and abrasive and even cold. However, her personal story arc is kind of cool because she realizes that Flemeth never really loved her in the way she thought she did. Essentially, Flemeth is grooming her to take over her body once hers withers down. So she's essentially a vassal, more or less, which of course gives her a huge existential crisis because she thinks she's just getting molded to be a great witch. No, you're getting molded to be taken over. Her romance is also super awesome because she's not used to feeling that love and care and warmth and receiving gifts, so she's kind of innocent to a lot of outside things. Also, the romance arc kind of ends on a cliffhanger, more or less, unless you get the Witch Hunt DLC, which I did because I wanted to finish the story. Otherwise, she kind of just leaves you hanging and it's just heartbreaking. But you do get to find her if you play that DLC. So with that said, I'm obviously going to be very biased, but I'm going to put her straight in the S rank. She is one of the best characters, and she also appears in most of the games. She's mentioned in Dragon Age 2, but she shows up in Origins, Inquisition, and now even the Veilguard. She's going to show up, which I'm excited to see. Next, we have Leliana. She is a human rogue. Now, her story arc is absolutely crazy. She's actually one of few characters that actually shows up in all three games. She shows up in Origins, 2, and Inquisition. But you really get to know her well in Origins, which is why I've included her in this specific list. Now, she has a very complicated past. She goes from being a bard to a Chantry Sister, to being the left hand of the Divine, to being the Inquisition Spy Master, and she can even become Divine herself if you choose your cards right. She's also the first bisexual character in all of the Dragon Age games, because you can romance her as a male and a female. If you play your cards right, and if you have the right sex, you can even have a foursome with Isabella and Zevran, who show up in both Origins and Dragon Age 2. Even her personal quest revolves around her former mentor and lover. Her attitude throughout the games changes drastically. She goes from being warm and having like an idealistic type of mindset to just losing all faith and being completely cold and absolutely ruthless, which is a crazy development. I wonder if she'll show up for the Veilguard. So overall, she has a great character arc. So with that, I'll also put her at an S tier. I mean, it's great. She's a phenomenal character. Next, we have the smooth-talking Zevran.
You know that yours is a beauty so exotic, it would turn the eye of the Maker himself.
Well, I suppose I...
And there we go. I think you owe me 5 silvers, yes?
Now, Zevran is an elf assassin. He's actually originally hired by Loghain, which is the game's main villain, to kill the Warden and his crew, as he is an Antivan Crow, which is a guild of assassins that come from Antiva. He has an interesting backstory as well, because essentially he was inducted or recruited into the Antivan Crows from a relatively young age, and he kind of gets disappointed in them, and it's kind of like a roller coaster with the Antivan Crows, and he eventually leaves the Antivan Crows and goes against them. He's very easygoing, he's charming, he's kind of ladies man, he's definitely a fuckboy. Like I said, he can have a threesome or up to a foursome with Isabella and the Warden in Dragon Age Origins, and Isabella and Hawk in Dragon Age 2. So he's laying the pipe pretty often. However, he's such a like not caring guy. There's not a whole lot of depth to him. So because of that, I'll put him in a C tier, honestly. He's cool, he's charming, but there's not a lot of depth to him. It's kind of like, he's kind of like a one-track character. Next, we have the mage Wynne.
Sorry about that. I'll take it from you right now. One of my socks is feeling a little damp anyway. A change would be nice.
You're going to put it on? It's filthy.
And dry. We're not exactly traveling in the lap of luxury here.
What hideous habits you've picked up.
She's actually a human healer, and she's lived in the circle for most of her life, if not all of it. She has kind of like a sketchy past, because in her past, she was kind of a hoe. She slept around and even had a kid out of wedlock, which she briefly mentions in the game. She's obviously mature and full of wisdom because she's lived a very long time. She's essentially living on borrowed time because she feels that her time is almost at an end. She has a motherly type personality, so that she definitely feels like she has the authority to lecture the Warden whenever he makes a decision that she's not in agreement with, and she even shows concerns over the Warden's romantic interest. Now, being an elder mage, she has an air of superiority. Honestly, it's kind of annoying because she talks to you like you're a fucking kid, because in her eyes you are, so it is kind of annoying. So because of that, and aside that you don't really delve into her story that much, in my opinion, I'll put her at a Z, but I'll put her above Zevran if I can, right here. Pop. Next up, we have Oghren.
You know what would do you some good?
A pair of nose plugs?
Go out, find a girl. Doesn't matter who, as long as there's no pants involved.
What makes you think I haven't?
I can smell purity a mile away.
He is a dwarven warrior berserker. Essentially, he's a fucking walking tank anytime you bring him in your squad. Now with Oghren, he's crude, he's crass, he's obnoxious, and honestly, he's fucking hilarious. He has some of the best quotes and one-liners in the entire series, in my opinion. The problem is, he never takes anything seriously. He's usually the comedic relief of the group. And because he's dwarven and because he's a warrior, he fucks anything that moves. As long as it has a hole, that's the goal. Now, aside from his bad sides from being very promiscuous, he's kind of an alcoholic. He has a very severe drinking problem, and it kind of gets worse as time goes on. And because of that, he's kind of a deadbeat dad and a terrible husband. So, considering all that, I'll put Oghren. I'll put him at a C, but I'll put him higher than Wynne or than Zevran, because he's a dope character, but he kind of hinders himself being the comedic relief because he can never take much seriously. So that kind of works against him. Next, we have Shale.
I see it found some augmentation crystals. I was not even aware it knew about them. Well done. So, what does it think? They don't make me look any wider, do they? I find I'm already too wide as it is.
She is a stone golem, formerly a female dwarven warrior, who essentially got blessed or attached to the stone, and she became a protector of sorts in the underground. She's an ancient being. She's lived for a very, very, very long time. The only problem is a lot of that time she's either spent asleep or a prisoner, and she gets awoken by the warden. She's a DLC character, but she's a very well written one. Her personal storyline is that she's essentially forgot most of what she used to be because of the passing of time. She doesn't remember her name, she doesn't remember her family, her caste. A lot of the memories that she has when she was a dwarf, they're pretty much gone. So that's part of her personal story arc. Now, she can seem very seriously up first, but she's very knowledgeable and she has a very sarcastic sense of humor. And her interactions with the group are actually kind of hilarious because she's so kind of alien to how things are. Because she's lived as a prisoner for so long, she kind of doesn't realize what the world is now, so it's kind of hilarious to see. So overall, even though she's a DLC character, I'm gonna put her at A. She's a very well developed character considering she's a DLC, and I genuinely like her. Next, we have Sten, who is a Qunari warrior.
You have a thing. It doesn't have a word in the Qunari tongue. Little baked things like bread, but sweet and crumbly. Yes, we have no such things in our lands. This should be remedied.
Even though he looks kind of human. In Dragon Age 2, you see that they're kind of like bull type of creatures, but in Dragon Age Origins, he looks like he's a human. However, Qunari can mean anything because Qunari is not really so much as a species, but as a way of life and religion. He obviously is a follower of the Qun, down to a T. So he's very stoic. He's kind of fatalistic in his way of thinking. You know, because of the Qun, he just believes everything has its purpose and we shouldn't question it. So things like sense of belonging and stuff like that doesn't really appeal to him. Because of the Qun, he already knows where he belongs. As a matter of fact, Sten isn't even a name. It's actually a position. They don't have names in their culture. It's just your ranking and your position. That's what your name is. He's very serious. He has a no bullshit type of personality, honestly. He's very blunt, very dry, and again, can seem kind of like an asshole. He's very abrupt, even in his way of speaking. He just says what needs to be said, and nothing more. He can be seen as very sexist as well. Because of the Qun, they believe that women have no place in battle. That's a man's job. Women are essentially for breeding and for taking care of the domestic task, which again, that's not really a fault on him, but on the culture that he's brought up on. Every once in a while, he shows his humor. As he warms up to the party, he has a kind of a dry and sarcastic sense of humor as well. He can be really fond of the Mabari War Hound in the party as the game goes on. He also loves paintings as a gift, but not because they're art, mainly because he admires the strokes and the techniques that it takes to create something like that. So he's very technically focused, and he also loves cookies, which is the most hilarious thing because you don't expect a big, serious, manly man to be fond of cookies. So with all that in mind, I'll still put him at a B, honestly. He's not an A, he's not as bad as being a C, but a B is all right. But it's like a B minus because again, he's kind of sexist and shit like that. But he can be very, very useful, and he's kind of cool when he warms up to you. Now next, we have the Mabari War Hound.
Well, super.
How odd. We now have a dog, and Alistair is still the dumbest one in the party.
And simply, he is the best of boys. Some people might not put him in S tier. I am not some people. I'm a dog person. He's a great dog. He's loyal. He's useful and is fierce. He is going straight into S tier. No questions asked. Now, lastly, we have Loghain.
Sound the retreat.
What about the king? Should we not...
Do as I command.
Yes, believe it or not, Loghain can become a permanent member of your party at a certain stage in the game. He's a human warrior who at one point is the commander of the Ferelden army, and he's a traitor, and he's an overall piece of shit. He's the reason why King Cailan dies and why the Battle of Ostagar is lost. And in doing so, he places himself as King Regent and declares the Grey Wardens as traitors, essentially blaming them for the battle being lost. Now, at one point in the game, you can either choose to execute him or let him live. If you let him live, he can become a Grey Warden, but in doing so, you exile Alistair, and that's how Alistair becomes a drunken fool at a bar in Kirkwall in Dragon Age 2. Now, if Loghain does come into your party, he can be part of the dark sex ritual with Morrigan, which fuck no, and more importantly, fuck you, Loghain, that's my woman. He can also show up in Dragon Age Inquisition as the warden ally of Hawke, but again, unless you're running an evil playthrough, I don't see why you would ever let him live. So, because of that, Loghain Mac tier goes straightly into F tier. Fuck you, you piece of shit, you let the king die. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the ultimate, definitive, 100% legit Dragon Age Origins companion tier list. I hope you like and agree with this tier list, and if you didn't, let me know in the comments. But before you do, just remember, you're wrong. Now, in all seriousness, I really do hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned because I will be making a Dragon Age 2 and a Dragon Age Inquisition companion tier list as well. Once they're up, I'll put them in the description somewhere around the screen so you can click on them and watch them if you wish, which I hope you do. As always, I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one. Hopefully the Dragon Age 2 tier list. Later.